I never imagined that grief could be layered, like a wound that keeps splitting open just as it starts to heal. When my parents passed away within months of each other, the pain was unbearable. My mother, who always smelled like warm vanilla and whispered encouragements into my ear, was gone. My father, with his quiet strength and steady presence, was no longer there to hold everything together. I barely had time to mourn before reality came crashing down on me like a tidal wave. The funeral had barely ended when I realized something was terribly wrong. My siblings, David and Sarah, were acting strange. They whispered in hushed voices, avoiding my eyes when I spoke to them. At first, I told myself it was just grief. We were all suffering. But deep down, a sickening feeling clawed at my gut. Something was off. The truth unraveled slowly, like a horror story I couldn't escape. One morning, I received a call from our family's attorney. His voice was cautious, distant, as if he knew something I didn't. When I arrived at his office, he laid out the papers in front of me, each word on the documents slicing through my trust like a razor. "Your parents' assets have already been divided," he said, avoiding my gaze. My heart stopped. "What do you mean divided?" My voice barely came out. He cleared his throat and adjusted his glasses. "Your siblings, they handled everything. The house, the savings, the inheritance. It's all been legally transferred. You weren't included." My blood turned to ice. My hands trembled as I picked up the documents, scanning the signatures, the legal jargon that seemed impossible to comprehend. There, at the bottom, was my parents' supposed will, neatly signed and notarized. But something was wrong. The date. The signatures. My mother had been in the hospital when this was signed. My father had been too weak to hold a pen. My mind whirled. How? How had they done this? The answer made my stomach churn. Legal manipulation, deceit, a carefully crafted betrayal by the very people who should have protected me. David and Sarah had stolen everything. The attorney hesitated, as if he wanted to say more, but what else was there to say? My parents had always been clear. We were meant to share everything equally. They would never have cut me out. Never. Yet here I was, left with nothing, while my siblings walked away with the home I grew up in, the money that was supposed to secure my future, the last remnants of my parents' love. It was all gone. And worst of all, they hadn't even told me. They hadn't even looked me in the eye as they took it all away. I walked out of that office in a daze, my ears ringing, my vision blurred by unshed tears. But beneath the heartbreak, something else began to stir, something dark and unfamiliar. It wasn't just sadness. It wasn't just betrayal. It was rage. How could they do this to me? My own flesh and blood. I had spent my entire life believing that no matter what happened, we were family. That bond was supposed to be unbreakable. But now I saw the truth. David and Sarah hadn't just taken my inheritance. They had taken everything. My trust, my love, my sense of belonging. They had thrown me away like I was nothing. And they thought I would accept it. But they were wrong. Because I wasn't just going to sit back and watch them get away with it. I was going to fight. I just didn't know how yet. But one thing was certain, I would find a way to make them pay. What happens next will shake everything to its core. I thought I knew betrayal, but I was about to learn just how deep it ran. And soon, the truth would come to light in ways I never expected. I couldn't sleep that night. The weight of what had happened pressed against my chest like a suffocating force, making it impossible to breathe. My mind kept replaying every memory of my childhood, searching desperately for some kind of explanation. Had I missed the signs? Had David and Sarah always been capable of this kind of cruelty, and I had just been too blind to see it? I remembered the way we used to play in the backyard, the three of us building forts out of old blankets and chairs, pretending we were explorers of a new world. We used to be inseparable. Or at least, that's what I thought. But maybe, deep down, the betrayal had started long before our parents died. Maybe I had just never been important to them at all. I reached for the old photo album beside my bed, my fingers trembling as I flipped through the worn pages. There we were, David, Sarah, and me, laughing in the summer sun, our mother watching us with that gentle smile of hers. In another picture, our father had his arms around all three of us, his expression proud and warm. My chest ached at the sight of them. They had loved us so much. If they were here now, would they be disappointed? Would they be ashamed of what David and Sarah had done? Or had they known all along that I was the outsider, the expendable one? The thought made me sick. I shut the album and curled up under the covers, willing myself to disappear. But no matter how tightly I shut my eyes, the truth remained, burning beneath my skin. They had taken everything from me. And it wasn't just about money or a house. It was about my parents' legacy, the love and security they had left behind. They had stolen not just my inheritance, but my connection to my family. Without it, I felt like I had no place left to belong. The next morning, I forced myself to get up, even though my body felt like lead. I needed answers. I needed to hear it from them. I drove to my parents' house. No, their house now, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw Sarah through the window, sipping coffee like it was just another peaceful morning. The sight made my stomach twist in rage. How dare she sit there, so comfortable, after what she had done? I knocked hard on the door. It took a moment before it swung open, and there stood David, his face instantly darkening when he saw me. "What are you doing here?" His voice was cold, distant. It sent a chill through me. "I know what you did," I said, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I saw the papers. You stole everything from me." David sighed, rubbing his temple as if I were nothing more than an inconvenience. "You need to let it go. It's done. Let it go." My whole body shook. How could he say that so easily? Mom and Dad would never have done this to me. "You forged something, manipulated something. I know it." Sarah appeared behind him then, leaning against the doorway with her arms crossed. "You weren't around," she said, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it before. "You left. We were the ones who took care of them. You have no idea what it was like." Her words hit me like a slap. Was that what they thought? That because I had moved away for a few years for school and work, I didn't deserve anything? That I didn't love our parents enough? I visited as much as I could, I whispered, my throat tight. I called every day. I was there when it mattered. David scoffed. "Well, the law doesn't see it that way. Everything is in our name now, and there's nothing you can do about it. So if you're here to make a scene, don't bother." I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make them feel even a fraction of the pain they had caused me. But instead, I just stood there, frozen in disbelief. The people standing in front of me weren't my siblings anymore. They were strangers, cold and ruthless. And they had made it clear, I didn't matter to them. Not anymore. I turned and walked away, feeling the weight of finality settle over me. But as I reached my car, something inside me shifted. They thought they had won. They thought I would just walk away, shattered and powerless. But they were wrong. Because I wasn't giving up. If they thought they could erase me from my own family, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I had nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, you become dangerous. It was time to fight back. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My chest burned with rage, but beneath that, beneath the betrayal and heartbreak, there was something else, determination. David and Sarah had stolen from me. They had lied, manipulated, and discarded me like I was nothing. But I wasn't nothing. And I wasn't about to let them get away with this. I wiped my eyes, inhaled deeply, and started my car. If they wanted to play dirty, I would learn how to play dirtier. The first step was understanding exactly how they had done it. I spent the next few days drowning in legal documents, researching inheritance fraud, and digging through every possible way they could have manipulated the will. The deeper I went, the angrier I became. The signatures on the will didn't match my parents' usual handwriting. The date of the final amendments. Suspiciously close to the time when my mother had been hospitalized, barely able to sit up, let alone sign legal documents. And then, there was the notary, a name I didn't recognize, someone who had supposedly verified everything. My gut told me that something was wrong. I knew I couldn't do this alone. I needed someone who could help me navigate the legal system, someone who wouldn't dismiss me like my siblings had. So, I made an appointment with another attorney, one who wasn't tied to the same firm that had processed my parents' estate. I walked into his office with my head held high, my fists clenched to keep myself from shaking. "I need your help," I said, laying out every piece of information I had gathered. "My siblings forged my parents' will. They stole everything from me." He listened carefully, nodding as he flipped through the documents. Then, he sighed and leaned back. "This is serious," he said. "If what you're saying is true, they committed fraud. But proving it won't be easy." I swallowed hard. "I don't care how hard it is. I'm not letting them get away with this." He gave me a small, approving nod. "Then let's start by verifying these signatures. If they're forged, we have a case." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of meetings, research, and emotional exhaustion. Every time I thought about what my siblings had done, the fire inside me burned hotter. I wasn't just fighting for money. I was fighting for justice. I was fighting for my parents, for their legacy, for the truth. And I was going to win. The real breakthrough came when I tracked down the so-called notary who had authenticated the will. I found her name buried in some public records and managed to get her contact information. My hands trembled as I dialed the number, my heart pounding. The phone rang twice before a voice answered, a woman, sounding cautious. "Hello." I took a deep breath. "Hi, my name is..." I hesitated, then pushed forward. "I'm calling about a will that you notarized for my parents, Richard and Emily Carter. Do you remember that?" There was silence on the other end. Then, she let out a shaky breath. I don't think I can talk about this." That was all I needed to hear. My stomach clenched. She knew something. "Please," I begged. "I just need the truth." Another long pause. Then, her voice dropped to a whisper. "I was told to sign off on those documents without meeting your parents. Your brother and sister, they told me it was just a formality, that your parents were too sick to come in person." My whole body went cold. "So you never actually saw them sign it?" "No," she admitted. "I should have asked more questions, but they paid me extra to do it quickly." "I'm so sorry." I hung up, my fingers numb. That was it. That was the proof I needed. My siblings had committed fraud, and now, I had the key to proving it. But I wasn't going to confront them yet. No, I wanted them to think they had won, to feel safe in their stolen victory. Because when I struck, I wanted it to be a complete and total downfall. I had always believed in family. But now, I believed in something stronger, justice. And soon, David and Sarah were going to learn just how dangerous it was to underestimate me. I could feel the shift in the air, like the moment before a storm, heavy and electric. I had the proof I needed, the fraudulent notarization, the forged signatures, the undeniable truth that David and Sarah had stolen what was rightfully mine. But I wasn't going to rush this. No, I wanted them to squirm. I wanted them to feel the weight of what they had done before I struck the final blow. I started small, planting seeds of doubt where they least expected. First, I sent them a casual message. "We need to talk. I know everything." No explanation. No anger. Just those 4 words. I could almost picture their faces as they read it, David's jaw tightening, Sarah's fingers clutching her phone a little too hard. I knew they would be unsettled, but I wanted them to wonder just how much I knew. And sure enough, within minutes, my phone buzzed. "David, what are you talking about?" "Sarah, stop being dramatic." "Dramatic?" I almost laughed. They had stolen everything from me, rewritten my parents' last wishes to erase me, and now they were calling me dramatic. I let the silence stretch, refusing to reply. Let them stew. Let them wonder. I wasn't going to give them the upper hand. A few days later, I made my first real move. My lawyer officially filed the complaint, sending legal notices directly to them. The moment I saw their names on the recipient list, a cold satisfaction settled inside me. They thought they had won. They thought I was weak. But now, they were going to learn just how wrong they were. The fallout was immediate. Sarah called first, her voice laced with fake concern. "Look," she started, her tone carefully measured, "there's no need to make this ugly. We're family. We can work something out." Family. That word felt like a slap. We stopped being family the moment you forged that will, I said, my voice steady. And now, you're going to face the consequences. There was silence on the other end. I could hear her breathing, hear the gears in her mind turning as she realized I wasn't bluffing. You have no proof, she finally said, but there was hesitation there. Doubt. I smiled, even though she couldn't see me. We'll see about that. David reacted differently. He didn't call. He didn't try to smooth things over. Instead, he showed up at my apartment unannounced. I opened the door to find him standing there, his face red with barely restrained fury. You're making a mistake, he hissed, stepping inside before I could stop him. I stood my ground. No, you made the mistake when you stole from me. His eyes narrowed, and for the first time, I saw something there, fear. You think you can take this to court, he sneered. Do you know how long that would take? How expensive it would be? You can't win. I tilted my head, studying him. He was nervous. Good. You sound scared, David, I said quietly. Is it because you know I can win? He scoffed, but it lacked the confidence he usually carried. Even if you try, we'll drag it out for years. You'll go broke before you see a cent. My stomach twisted. I knew he was right about one thing. Court battles could take years. And I didn't have unlimited resources like he did. But I had something else. Something he hadn't accounted for. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. Funny thing about the truth, David. It doesn't need years. It just needs the right moment. His expression flickered, just for a second, and I knew then, he was crumbling. He just didn't know it yet. But they would soon. Because I wasn't stopping here. I had one last card to play, and when I revealed it, it would shatter everything they thought they knew. I could feel the walls closing in on them, the panic settling in their voices, the cracks forming in their perfectly constructed lies. But I wasn't finished yet. Because buried beneath their fraud, beneath the greed that had driven them to steal from me, there was something deeper. Something they never wanted me to find out. A truth so ugly it made their betrayal seem small in comparison. And I was about to bring it into the light. It started with a memory, one that had been lingering at the edges of my mind ever since this nightmare began. A conversation I'd had with my mother years ago, one I'd barely thought about at the time. We had been in the kitchen, the scent of fresh coffee in the air, when she had sighed heavily, her fingers tracing the rim of her mug. There are things you don't know, sweetheart, she had murmured. Things I wish I could tell you, but some truths only bring pain. I had laughed then, brushing it off as one of her cryptic musings, never pressing for answers. But now, with everything that had happened, those words echoed inside me, louder than ever. What had she been hiding? And more importantly, had David and Sarah known all along? I dug deeper. I went through old files, medical records, anything that might lead me to the truth. And then, I found it. A sealed envelope, tucked away in my mother's belongings, untouched for years. My hands trembled as I opened it, my breath hitching as I unfolded the papers inside. A birth certificate. My birth certificate. But there was something wrong. The name listed under father wasn't my dad's. It was someone else. Someone I had never heard of. I felt the world tilt beneath me. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I read the name again and again, willing it to change, for it to be a mistake. But it wasn't. My father, the man who had raised me, who had loved me unconditionally, wasn't my biological father. And that meant, David and Sarah weren't my full siblings. My breath came in sharp, uneven gasps as the realization hit me. They had known. They had always known. That's why they had done this so easily, why they had cut me out without a second thought. To them, I wasn't really family. I was just a secret, an outsider, a mistake they had tolerated until they didn't have to anymore. I felt sick. Every memory, every moment I had shared with them, felt like a cruel joke. They had betrayed me not just out of greed, but out of something worse, resentment. I had spent my entire life believing we were one unit, one unbreakable bond, only to find out that, to them, I was never truly one of them. And now, they had erased me completely, like I had never mattered. I sat with the truth for hours, my mind spinning, my emotions a tangled mess of anger, sadness, and something dangerously close to relief. Because now, I understood. Now, I knew. And knowledge was power. I called a family meeting. I told them I had something important to say, something they needed to hear. They arrived, wary, on edge, no doubt expecting another fight over the will. But they had no idea what was coming. I stood before them, gripping the papers in my hand, my voice calm, steady. I know why you did it, I said, my eyes locking onto theirs. It wasn't just about the money. It was because you never considered me one of you. David scoffed, arms crossed, but there was unease in his stance. What are you talking about? I didn't hesitate. I dropped the papers onto the table between us. I know the truth. I know Dad wasn't my real father. Sarah's face drained of color. David's jaw clenched. They didn't say anything, but they didn't have to. Their silence told me everything. They had known. They had kept this from me my whole life. And now, they had used it as justification to take everything from me. I let the silence stretch, let them sit in their guilt, their shame, their cowardice. Then, I smiled. It doesn't matter, I said, my voice like steel. Because even if I wasn't blood, he was still my father. And this house. That money. Everything he left behind. It wasn't just yours to take. And now, I'm going to make sure the world knows what you did. They thought they had destroyed me. But in trying to erase me, they had only made me stronger. And they had no idea what was coming next. For a moment, the only sound in the room was the soft rustling of the papers I had laid before them. David and Sarah stared at them, their faces pale, their bodies stiff. I could see the calculations running through their minds, the desperate attempt to find a way out, to twist this into something that still allowed them to win. But there was no way out. The truth was right in front of them, undeniable, irreversible. I wasn't their full sister. I was the secret they had always resented, the outsider they had tolerated until the moment they could erase me completely. But what they hadn't expected was that the very thing they thought made me weak was now my greatest strength. David was the first to break. His fingers curled into fists, his jaw tightening as he let out a slow breath. This doesn't change anything, he muttered, though his voice lacked conviction. The will is legal. The assets are in our name. You have no right to anything. I tilted my head, watching him like he was a puzzle I had finally solved. You really believe that, don't you? My voice was calm, almost pitying. You think that just because you rigged the legal system in your favor, that makes it right? That makes it yours. Sarah shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting toward the door as if she wanted to escape. She had always been the one who cracked under pressure first. I turned to her, my gaze unwavering. Tell me, Sarah, do you think Dad, our dad, would be proud of what you did? Her lower lip trembled, and for a fleeting second, I thought she might break down. But then she straightened her shoulders, her voice sharp with forced confidence. He's not your dad. The words hit me like a slap, but I didn't flinch. I just smiled, shaking my head. Maybe not by blood, I admitted, but he chose to be my father. He raised me, loved me, protected me. And that's more than either of you can say right now. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. Because the only thing you two have proven is that you were never worthy of him. That was when the cracks truly formed. David's eyes flickered with something close to doubt, and Sarah looked away, her hands clenched in her lap. But I wasn't done. I pulled out my final weapon, the official fraud report my lawyer had filed, along with the testimony from the notary who had admitted to signing off on the will without ever seeing our parents. This is going to court, I said, my voice steady. And when it does, the truth will come out. You committed fraud. You lied, manipulated, and stole from me. And now, you're going to pay for it. Sarah let out a choked sound, her hands flying to her mouth. David stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't know what you're doing, he hissed. I met his glare head-on. Oh, I know exactly what I'm doing. And I did. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't the lost little sister begging for scraps of love and validation. I was standing in my truth, and there was nothing they could do to take that from me. The legal battle was long and messy, but the outcome was inevitable. The evidence was too strong, the fraud too blatant. The judge ruled in my favor, overturning the fraudulent will and ordering the rightful division of my parents' assets. David and Sarah tried to fight it, but in the end, they lost more than just money. They lost their reputations, their standing, and most importantly, their power over me. I walked away from that courtroom with more than just justice. I walked away free. Free from the weight of their betrayal. Free from the illusion that we had ever been a real family. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: peace. I stood outside what had once been our family home, taking a deep breath as the wind carried the scent of freshly cut grass. This house, this place, had once held so many happy memories. But now, it was just a structure, bricks and wood and glass. It didn't define me. It never had. I turned my back on it, stepping forward into the unknown. I wasn't the girl they had tried to destroy. I wasn't the forgotten sibling, the expendable one. I was stronger. And as I walked away, leaving the past behind me, I knew one thing for certain: this was just the beginning of the life I was meant to live.